Oh my God.
What? She didn't plot to kill him.
I don't know.
Locked in an old prison, could we cope for 24 hours?
Right, I know that they exist now.
Hello and welcome to Most Haunted. We're in Derby, a city which calls itself the ghost capital of England. Now, Derby is world famous for its ghost walks, and over 95,000 people have been on them in 8 years. So where better to spend 24 hours than in the old Derby prison? Scenes of total incarceration and brutal executions.
In the basement, underneath buildings hidden below the pavements, Derby Jail still exists, although now it's used as a tourist attraction. Since 1756, it has housed hundreds of prisoners. Many of them died here and still refuse to leave.
So, is the old Derby prison haunted, or is it just a tourist attraction to pull in the crowds? That's what the Most Haunted team want to find out.
There were over 200 hanging offences in England. You could be hanged for stealing a sheep, stealing a horse, cutting down trees, breaking down riverbanks, impersonating a Chelsea pensioner, setting fire to haystacks, appearing on the street with a sooty face, poaching, burglary, shop breaking. 200 hanging offences.
Execution was commonplace here, and many of the convicts were hanged right outside the prison. And I wonder whether any of the spirits are still hanging around. Now, of course, I am not going to spend the whole night in this prison on my own. You must be joking. I'll be too scared for that. So, of course, we've got the Most Haunted team. We've got Mark on Steadicam, Angle behind, and, of course, we've got the lovely Martin and the rest of the crew. Say hi. Hi. Where's Marcel? You always get really scared.
There's a really funny atmosphere in there. It's quite oppressive, so I'm not looking forward to tonight, really.
Go on, give us a smile.
That should scare people.
Now, most people, if they encounter anything paranormal, immediately jump to the conclusion that it's a ghost. Now, Jason Carr, parapsychologist, you don't do that.
I don't do that. I don't believe in ghosts.
At all?
Well, most people, when they think they've seen a ghost or had some kind of unusual occurrence, automatically will assume that it is paranormal without looking into it in any depth at all. We don't do that. We look for scientific evidence, we look for logical explanations, looking at it in a logical and analytical way. People don't do that. They're too ready to accept the unknown.
A bit like myself.
A bit like you.
And Marcel as well.
And a few more people here as
Absolutely.
well.
Now, here at the prison, what sort of strange occurrences have happened in the past here?
Well, being a prison, it's associated with lots of unpleasant and negative feelings anyway. A lot of people obviously have spent a lot of time here in unpleasant situations and conditions waiting to die. So you're going to get that feeling when you go in anyway. You don't need to be psychic or in tune to get that. But people have seen ghosts here, smoky shapes, they've had things moving, they've had actually a ghost stood just where we are sat here in the garden. A man in a long leather sort of jerkin type of affair. There isn't any particular historical personalities that can be identified haunting here. It's really a selection of different characters.
And what about, I know there's a connection, because isn't today supposed to be a pagan holiday?
It is, yeah. Today is Imbolc, or Oimelc, and that is one of the 8 pagan festivals throughout the year. It's the Celtic festival, really, and it symbolises the change from winter into spring. So it's about rebirth, it's about happiness, growth, crocuses, rabbits, all the nice things coming back in from the winter. And Celtic pagan festivals are linked to supernatural and unusual phenomena, and there is statistically more unusual things happening around pagan festivals, so it might be interesting that we're here on a particularly special day. We might get more happening.
Is it true to say that when you're actually in an environment like this, that the energy can actually build up gradually, or not at all?
If you believe the energy is there at all, then the theories state that yes, when there's lots of people around, more things happen when the energy is built up. Now, we know from studies that when people are in a group having fun or working or doing anything really, just being active, that more things happen. If you sit around waiting, we've said this before, waiting for the ghost to appear, nothing happens. So the energy, if you believe that, is probably building as we speak.
What's this thing called ectoplasm?
Ectoplasm, yeah. Well, ectoplasm is, it derives actually from a Greek word or 2 words, ektos and plasma, which literally means exteriorized substance. And when you see photographs of wispy, ghost-like images, that is supposed to be ectoplasm. But if you go back to spiritualist days when mediums in the Victorian era used to give seances, they supposedly would produce, perhaps I'm saying the wrong thing here, they used to produce ectoplasm from their bodies, and the ectoplasm would come out and form into the shape of a ghost. That's what it's supposed to be. There's no scientific evidence for it.
Has it happened here?
It's supposed to happen in every haunted house, so we might get some tonight, you never know.
Now, you're going to be doing some experiments here tonight. What
We
sort
are.
of things are we going to be doing?
Well, I'm going to use a trigger object across. Now, this is particularly relevant here because this site actually has links with a nunnery, and some of the reported unusual occurrences are associated with nuns or monks chanting. So that's to try and entice the ghosts out, if you like. But more interesting than those here, I particularly want to try a new experiment, which is known as automatic writing. Now, in spiritualist history, this is where a medium goes into a trance state and blindfold, they write on a piece of paper, and allegedly the information that is written comes from a ghost. Now, you don't have to be psychic or mediumistic to try this, and I'd like yourself and perhaps a couple of members of the crew to do this in each of the cells, separate.
Are we all happy to do that? Nobody's putting their hand up.
Well, if we can do it, it'd be interesting, I think, to look at the different things that come out and see if they correspond to anything historical. So I think that will be very interesting and very relevant here because we can put you separate.
Now, of course, our team would not be complete without our spirit medium, Derek Okora, and he is on his way as we speak.
You stood on the back of a cart. Big, thick rope put around your neck. The horse was drawn away, and you were left literally swinging in the breeze. It could take you anything up to a quarter of an hour to die of slow strangulation, kicking, writhing, choking, vomiting. And then he used to cut the rope up into small lengths and sell it to the crowd. Money for old rope. After the execution, murderers were also sentenced to be either dissected publicly by doctors or gibbeted, which is hung up in a metal cage. Your body was tarred and you were hung near the scene of the crime and left to rot, and for the crows to pick at your eyes and your bones to bleach. And of course, you see, in those days, as today, we all crave a decent burial, and people were terrified of not having this burial and their body not being whole. So of course they believed that on the Day of Judgment, if their body wasn't whole and their soul wasn't, and they'd rot in hell forever. Some people, of course, tried to take their own lives. And here, in this building, two brothers, burglars, the Jones brothers, actually committed suicide inside one of these cells the night before their execution. And this was the terrible, terrible torment of these poor, unfortunate people that occupied these cells here.
The prison was designed to hold 21 convicts. That's one person per cell. Can you imagine what it must have felt like when they put 6 people in there for 23 hours a day? Picture this. You're all sitting quietly in this room when all of a sudden the face of a dead person superimposes itself onto the person sitting right next to you. How terrifying that would be. Well, that is what has been reported in this very room. All of the cells run off this main passageway where ghostly figures are often seen. Also, noises are heard here, clicking, scraping, dragging, and bolts being closed across doors. Prisoners were split into cells. Felons, debtors, and women. But it's in this particular cell that a lot of paranormal activity has been reported. Strange, shapeless mists, streaks of light, and the noise of something turning over on the straw bed.
I've been doing ghost walks around the city of Derby for the last 9 years. People used to say, will we see a ghost? And I used to say, no, not on a commercial ghost walk, until I took this building over. And the number of people that have had, for want of a better word, experiences, ghostly ones in here, including me, it does alter your outlook when you really, really have seen something yourself. And I have.
What I'm actually doing here, we haven't officially started the investigation yet, Derek hasn't arrived, but just because people are milling around and a few things and feelings have been reported in this cell and the cell next door, I thought I'd set up a trigger object now. So what I'm doing is drawing around the edge of the cross, exactly, so we can tell if it's moved even a few millimetres. If it does move, it will be paranormal. Now, we have had this and other things move in other locations, so we'll have to wait and see. I'll secure it up again so we can make sure no one's coming in. Very scientific way of securing the location, as you can see.
Derek Akora, our spiritualist medium, had found the jail, making our investigation team complete. Before our investigation, there was time to discuss our favourite subject, ghosts.
Do you actually think that they have a choice to where they can actually haunt?
Yes, I do, Richard, because, you know, as we exercise this special thing that we call free will here, when we're in the physical body, it's no different when we're in the spirit body. So, yes, without a doubt, we can pick and choose. But generally, in the choosing, it's generally to something and a place where we've had experience.
Can I ask you a question on what you've just said there, Derek? Because when you look at ghost stories, ghost tales, a lot of emphasis is put on ghosts not liking where they are. Why would they choose to be stuck in that limbo state?
Okay, well, to my understanding, you'll find a person, an individual, being stuck in an atmosphere. If they've passed away from the physical body in an unnatural way, the likelihood is 9 out of 10 they can be stuck in the atmosphere until, for a certain period of time, until they're actually, let's say, encouraged from a higher sphere by, if you wish, angelic beings to come along and show them that they now no longer should be in this atmosphere and to seek the light.
Why is it that ghosts seem to like to haunt graveyards? You'd think that they want to sort of go to a more pleasant place to haunt. Why stay where they were buried?
Well, I think it's actually a common misconception that ghosts haunt graveyards. I mean, if you look at the statistics of people who've reported ghost sightings in graveyards, they're very, very, very rare. There is an interesting folk tale to do with ghosts in graveyards, and that is that the first person who is interred in the graveyard haunts it and looks after the rest of the ghosts, and it's known as the graveyard guardian. And if you look back in English folk tales, there's hints at somebody being sacrificed when a new graveyard is created in order that the graveyard has its graveyard guardian. But if you, as I say, if you look at the evidence, there's not many sightings of ghosts actually in graveyards.
And I'd like to add also that in the time that I've been doing my work with spirits, I've never known one spirit yet to have the inclination to go back to a place where possibly their bones have been buried, to a dark, damp, horrible place. Their first inclinations are, let's get back home, where I had some fantastic experiences, where, you know, my family, my loved ones are, and I know that when I go in there, it's going to be brightness. If I go to the graveyard, I'll probably be the only one standing there, having a look at all the graves with no one else there but myself. So, no, I don't go with many spirits wanting to go back to graveyards.
Also, I suppose a graveyard is really an unfamiliar place because it's new to that, because they've only just been buried there. It's like you said, you know, to go back to where they lived is somewhere they know, which is familiar to them.
Yeah.
There's another point as well about graveyards. There's a lot of photographs taken of orbs in graveyards. Now, we don't know what these orb things are. We've caught them ourselves. We don't know what they are. But one theory is that in graveyards, natural earth gases are emitted from the ground, and that under certain conditions these can be seen as lights. They're often described as will-o'-the-wisp lights in certain folk traditions. And this might be something completely natural caused by decomposing bodies, which is being seen by the human eye. That may explain why people think they're seeing odd things in graveyards. It's nothing ghostly at all.
I've got a question. How come, if so many ghosts are seen, parapsychologists don't believe in them?
Well, that's an interesting question, Martin. And really, when people think they've seen a ghost or had a ghostly encounter, they're not looking at it rationally. They're accepting it being a ghost or being paranormal as an explanation, and it isn't. If they looked at it in an objective, analytical, scientific way, then you'll probably find that 9 times out of 10, what they've experienced isn't ghostly at all, and that's why I don't believe in ghosts. actually been in here for just under an hour, and we've kept the area secure, so I know no one's been inside. We're just going to check to see if the trigger object has moved. Oh, it's moved! It's moved loads! Look! It's moved! Hey! It's moved 7-8 millimetres right out of the line. You can see it's completely moved. No one's been in here. It's been a controlled area as much as we can control it. That's interesting because normally with trigger objects they don't move. It has happened before. I particularly chose the cross for here because there is a connection to nuns and monks being heard here singing or chanting, and there is a nunnery very, very close to here, or there used to be. This area actually where the prison or the jail was originally built was known as Nuns Green. That was its original name, which is why we chose the cross. We thought it might be particularly interesting to people, and also because they are waiting for their sort of hour of death or time of death, day of death. A sort of symbol which would give them hope, like a cross would to somebody who believes in that faith or religion, would sort of instill more interest perhaps than other objects. So particularly relevant to here, and it's moved, so it's worked. I would bet my sort of money on this that it won't be on tape because we've already had some odd things happen with the camera in this cell this evening. So I will bet my money that there's nothing on the tape and that it will have happened after the tape finished.
Amazingly, we had caught the cross moving. Unfortunately, the camera was not set wide enough so we couldn't see all sides of the paper. All we know was that the cell was locked and no one could have entered the room. This can only be classed as poltergeist activity. The moving cross had made us all jumpy, but Derek wanted to go back to the same cell to see if he could communicate with anyone.
I'm picking up a great deal of, quite simply, mixed emotions in this cell. I feel as if I'm isolated and I'm singular, because this energy is take me back in a reflection of a life, you know, and I feel a male memory thought, and I feel as if, you know, I want to be you know, something round my neck as if, you know, like a hanging. Okay. But I've also, there's something else, there's another side to him, another side. And I feel it's like as if, for some reason, he's laughing about the other side of his nature. Because what he said in what I was getting in the residual, and even Sam butted in there, and he said, you know, he was good with the money, he was a master forger. That alone could have got him incarcerated. But he got off with that. Now he's talking about the name Alice. His words, which is left in the residual, Sam is now opening that up for me, he said these words. No, she wasn't guilty. No, she wasn't guilty. David? What do you mean, Sam? David? Yes. Say it again. David George. David George. David George. David, say it again, please. It's not very clear.
Is David George's spirit here?
No. No. He said that Alice, she must have been linked here. Yes. She didn't plot to kill him. She didn't plot to kill him. Who did she not plot to kill? David?
David what?
David Lloyd. David Lloyd George. David Lloyd, she was not guilty, but she was incarcerated. Take that off me. Don't do that to me. Now, this is someone, actually, this is not Sam, it's not the residual energy.
I feel sick.
Yes.
I feel sick.
Do you want to come out?
Do you want to come out a little bit?
Just a little bit?
Yes.
Do you understand what you're giving?
Yes. Yeah. And some people are not just happy with the idea of a person to be executed, but A bit. Yes. Sure. You'll be okay. Yes, Carl.
I don't know. I don't know.
What was the feelings that were...
What do you think the reason is that
Well,
it's having this
yes,
reaction?
I can understand it very, very clearly. What was actually happening was taking us back in memory of the residual of which I was trying to explain at the time, is that these sorts of conditions and stuff had taken place in these foundations because they take me in mind. Oh, she's okay. She'll be all right in a minute. And they take me in mind because, you know, this is a very, very small building as well, and yet I want to go in mind as if it's much bigger.
In what way?
I just feel as if this is only like a small portion of there's something, maybe the foundations, maybe there was something bigger.
Well, it's part of a bigger building, as you'll
Yes.
There's a building above us,
No,
obviously.
I mean, this place here is just a place for people to just resign themselves, just to get themselves ready for the inevitable.
Like a preparation.
Preparation for their physical death. A statement was made in that cell there that some people are not happy just to see someone just strung up and hung, but you know, to see the feelings of having your guts ripped out.
Do you mean like hung, drawn and quartered?
Yes.
I cannot explain why I became so emotional. It is something that will bother me for years. 5 minutes after this, I felt absolutely fine.
What did you feel? What
I just
happened
felt,
to you?
I still feel it now, like
Yes.
sick to my stomach. I
Yes.
feel so embarrassed about this, I have to say.
No.
It's just like the sickiest feeling in my stomach. And then the desire to just, I can't explain it. There is no explanation.
When you were in there, Derek, just before that happened, you said, "Don't do that, take it away from me." What were you experiencing? Something pushing you? Or?
I was getting the feeling as if I was being, okay, in the person's position of being pulled, manhandled, knowing at those last seconds he knew his fate. And the feelings of the stomach now, you know, what I've just talked about the hung, drawn and quartered, you know, probably some of the most cruelest ways before that sort of physical death is to let the prisoner know exactly what the fate was. So mentally what a vet, as I understand it, was experiencing there was just prior seconds to the person being manhandled, okay? And this is when it hit me, and then the vet started to feel that's it, because in his mental mind, in his mind, consciously, he's saying to himself, I'm being taken to now go and experience this. So his stomach was feeling sick. He was feeling all the emotions. He was tearful.
And you see, the thing is, today I've been absolutely fine, absolutely happy. I mean, everybody can say that. I've been singing away. And I've only ever been in that room earlier on today, but that was with everybody else. And it was just, I don't know whether you conjured up anything or whatever. All I know is that I would never, and I have never, cried and behaved like I've only ever done that in front of my husband at home.
I've been with you all day here, and you haven't been like this
Still
at
getting
all.
it now, I have no idea
Yes.
why.
Do you want to go outside?
No, I'm fine, I'll be all right in a minute. You carry on.
After a short break to compose myself, we were able to continue the night's investigation.
Now, as we come here to this curtain, and no doubt an aperture there at the back, I'm drawn there, and Sam said to me, you know, in a chuckle way, often he pulls me leg to Sam, he's got a sense of humour, as you know, and he said to me, in there, at a given time, in there, I take that to be cell-like. And he said, you know, you've heard of martyrs, haven't you, Derek? What you talk about as martyrdom. And I said, yes. And he said, there was a number of souls that were linked to this here. And he said something else, that, so I don't know how many in the number at times of incarceration, but he said, you must say these words very clearly and very precisely and very truthfully. and he said, say these words. So I'm just repeating. Patriarch, or patriarch martyr. So I want to say, whatever the links with that word or name. Oh, and I get a man who comes in here often and laughs and says, aha, I got away with it. Aha, I got away with it. They didn't stretch my neck. And I said, Sam, who is he? And this man has been seen. I don't know how many times. And the name is George. No, it's not George, forgive me. That's a separate person. There's been a George in here at some time. But can I say, yes, yes. The surname Bullock, spelt with a U, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one who's full of laughter. He escaped the noose. He did a deal. He did a deal. Oh, he's really chuffed with himself, absolutely pleased. But he pays visits.
What's his first name, Derek?
Noel.
Noel Bullock.
Noel and Bullock.
Okay, thank you.
But he talks about the martyrs.
When he says, you say he talks about, so he's not a residual energy spirit, he's a spirit talking to you.
Not to me personally,
to Sam. Okay, so can you ask Sam to ask him when he was around, what his year of sentient being and life was?
Again, I feel as if, because he's showing me figures, as if they're taking me back to, it's like something 1704, 1706.
Okay.
In time.
Can you ask him who was on the throne at that point?
I can ask. Well, I don't know what the conflict is or the confliction here, but he gives me both Charles and then he gives me James.
Okay, thank you.
Look what I'm getting now. Wow, wow, wow. So, excuse me, wow, wow, wow. I feel as if we've got people's bodies being taken, and the bodies are taken somewhere else, and the bodies are being dissected. They're being dissected and cut up, and what have you. But you know, I also get before that some of these necks were not truly stretched or broken, and poor souls found themselves waking up on a slab and then having to undergo, and whoever this person who was cutting actually took the life from them there and then. Stabbing them. Multiple stabbings. And I get those conditions being brought into this atmosphere, but not actually done here.
Not done here. Okay.
Taken away, you see. And they were taken away in carts. Okay. Open carts. A number of people were actually found themselves experiencing the choking and what have you, and then a blankness, and then waking up in this dark, damp room, and then focusing their eyes, getting full focus. This was affecting my eyes earlier, because they would take me to another room, another area.
Do you want to go to another? Do you want to go to another area, or?
Yes. I feel as if we want to go.
Not been in here.
Yes, if we go here.
Okay.
Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Yvette.
Be brave.
Repeat something that I heard very, very strongly. Please, my Father, I repent. Please, my Father, forgive my sins. Please, my Father, I have been of the devil, and no longer do I wish to be this way.
What does that mean, of the devil?
I feel a person who has done terrible deeds, terrible things in their time, and as they've drawn close to the knowledge of their physical deaths, in their own way, it's like a repentance. And there's a lot in here, for some reason, individualised here. whether it was one individual man, because I get a mental picture of a person who he fell from grace. Oh. He fell from grace. He was caught. He was a person of some kind of standing, okay?
Who is the person?
He felt as if he couldn't be caught, or he shouldn't be caught, because of who he was. And he covered up and he covered up. And I feel he actually took the life of a lady. He took the life of a lady. Now, whether this, I feel as if the lady was known to him. Maybe a mistress, a wife, and he was well-to-do, so to speak, in his day, and he never felt as if he could be caught, incarcerated. He was too high up in his life, but he was caught, and he was not caught on a technicality. He was caught and rightly brought to justice in the sense of his incarceration, and he did lose his physical life. He was hung. He was also one of the many that he was known to be saying, as he was led out of this incarceration, ready to face his judgment, God as he would, because he was quoting God all the way, I feel, to the gallows or what have you.
What was he saying? You said he was saying, and you were about to say a sentence.
I feel it was, forgive my evil for what I practiced, for what I did and my deeds.
You seem to have got quite a strong link with this entity or spirit.
Yes.
And what you've said is quite anecdotal. Do you know who this is? What's the person's name?
At this moment, I don't.
You don't?
I keep on asking Sam kindly to see if he can interact and find out who he is.
Because it's interesting if I can historically check, 'cause we have a lot of records of the people connected with this building.
Okay.
It's interesting if I can verify something that you say. But
Yes. I know, thank you, Sam. I know the first name connected here is John.
Thank you.
John. And Sam's pointing that with me. Yes, that's the name.
Thank you, Sam.
Good. Also, around the time of many incarcerations waiting to go, this man walked to the gallows. It's like as if he walked with the symbol of faith, the cross. He was holding a cross, and he asked priesthood to come and, in his own way, bless him before he met his maker.
Like the last rites?
Yes. And it was totally in this man's life, in his physical life, this was the opposite of what people outside this jailing system would know of him. They'd say, they'd be shocked and surprised of the way he lived his life.
Right.
And yet he repented only moments before. But he did ask for some kind of blessings from the clergy. And it wasn't forthcoming until virtually the last minute for his salvation, as he felt.
Do you think now is a good time for us to turn the lights off?
I do, yes.
Okay.
So far, it had been an incredible night as the cells of Derby Gaol revealed a cruel and desperate history. We were all unnerved by thoughts of what would happen when the lights went out. The moving cross and my emotional outburst were enough to fill some crew members with doubts as to whether they could remain in the jail for the rest of the night. Those who stayed wanted to go back to the cell that seemed to be incredibly active.
What's that smell of flowers?
What?
Come in. It's not me.
Oh,
There
my
is
God.
as well, yeah.
Smell this, smell this.
Oh,
yes.
that's roses.
Yes, there's roses,
It is.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh,
isn't
my
it strong?
God. What a lovely smell.
I'll have to check everyone's perfumes now.
I'm not wearing
No, I know your perfume.
I am.
We talked about it earlier.
It's
I'll have to
fading a
check.
bit now, isn't it? Or is it my
Yes, it is. You're right.
It's fading, it's almost gone.
Gone completely.
Wow.
Gone now, completely.
Gone.
I've never ever smelled.
No, we've been in here loads of times today, and that smell wasn't in. He has not been in here at all. Hasn't.
No. Isn't that amazing? That was weird.
The interesting thing with allegedly paranormal scents or phantom smells is that they dissipate very quickly, and that did within about 2 or 3 seconds. It completely went.
Yeah.
And smells don't do that naturally. Not when they're that
No,
strong.
they linger.
a bit.
Where?
Right between Jason and Derek.
Something here between us.
Orb.
It was interesting that this strange moving light, an orb, was seen at the same time as everyone was smelling roses.
Shall we now? I think what we should do is Mark and Ian. Are you happy to stay in here?
Yeah.
And Derek and I will, and Jason will go in the other cell. All right. So we'll go out, and Jason, if you can shut them in.
Yeah, I
Good luck,
will.
guys.
Good luck.
That was a bit strange, that smell, but I do need, in order to eradicate any possible natural causes, I need to check everyone's perfume, male and female.
Okay.
Hear that wind? Well, it really is dark, and I'm glad as well that I'm not anywhere and Mark's seen. Are you seeing anything? I don't know what I'm looking for if I see an orb. It'll be a little pinpoint of light. I think I've just seen an orb actually. What was it like? Bottom left, it was just like a tiny comet. Yeah. And it just went dead slowly from... That's exactly it. But it wasn't that clear, that's the only thing.
I think that smell was interesting. I have smelled paranormal, for want of a better word, smells lots of times in different places. It's probably the most commonly experienced thing for me. And I've experienced lots of different smells.
Oh, the roses.
Did you smell it as well?
Oh yes, very much
That
so,
was
yeah.
very strong, it was really pungent.
Yeah.
And then it dissipated like that. That's it for me.
Just explain what Mark and Ian are doing next door.
Well, Mark and Ian are trying an experiment of automatic writing, which, if you go back to the Victorian era when mediums were very popular and spiritualism was extremely a good pastime for everybody, they used to try and do automatic writing whereby they have a piece of blank paper and a pen, close your eyes, ask a spirit to write through them. Now, a lot of this is illegible and nonsense, and that's probably what we'll get. But it's interesting to see if anything they come out with fits in with historical records that we can check. They may get nothing. I'm very surprised if they get anything at all. But if they do, it's worth having a look.
I've actually, talking about this subject, I have actually seen a person instrumented, actually in front of my very eyes, actually doing pages and pages of very intricate, very articulate, very pronounced words where the person had no, let's say, didn't have the intellect to be able to put down all this stuff on papers, I've actually seen it.
I haven't seen it done. I've examined them after they've been done.
Yeah.
If you you all know about the case of Borley Rectory, the most famous psychical research case in history. They had literally pages and pages and pages, and they actually ended up using wallpaper because it was continual, the back of wallpaper to write up because there was so much coming out. And I think it's fair to say a lot of it was rubbish, but some of it made sense. It's like everything, it's open to interpretation and open to analysis of how much of it is right and how much of it is wrong. But it's interesting, it's another research tool that we use.
I'm just going to get up and stand up and have a little look. Okay. See if... Oh, is that you? That's usually. Right.
Did you just point at me then?
No.
No.
I'm pointing at the door.
Convinced. No. Oh my god! What? I've just seen a fantastic... That must have been an orb.
Where?
It went right across that... Right, I know that they exist now. That was bizarre.
Okay, did it go
was
past
so
me?
obvious.
Yeah?
I wonder how Mark and Ian are doing next door.
Yeah.
Probably bored stupid.
Well, I don't think so. I think I know it's daft and it's silly, but I'm sitting here and I'm getting frustrated
Why?
because nothing is happening in here. We smelt those flowers.
Yeah, everything's
the
happening
cross
in that
was,
cell.
everything is happening in that room. I mean,
stuff
I
with
would
the camera.
personally like to go back in that room.
Yes.
And it's almost
Yeah.
like face your fear. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it smelt so lovely in there.
That was nice, that smell.
Why don't we just all go in there?
Should we go?
All of us?
Let's
Yeah,
go.
why not?
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't know what their
Safety in
situation
numbers.
is. How are you doing?
We've seen some orbs.
Great. We're coming to join you. There's that smell again.
Yeah, it's back.
Can't you smell it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't smell it.
Can you not smell it,
Yeah.
guys?
I can't smell it at all.
I can't.
Have either of you got aftershave on?
I haven't, no.
No, I haven't.
There was no logical explanation for the strong smell of roses, which seemed to come and go in seconds. Jason wanted to try out the automatic handwriting experiment on a few of us, but with only a couple of lines and squiggles drawn that meant nothing, we could not use the results as part of our paranormal investigation. The crew was shocked at the amount of paranormal activity that had happened earlier on in the evening, but some members wanted more. This wasn't to be. We were more than satisfied with the strange smell of roses, the orbs, my strange outburst, and the moving cross, and they all happened in the same cell.
When we arrived here, I was expecting very little. We got a plethora of phenomena. We got Yvette's breakdown in tears. We got the smell of roses, which nobody could explain, including myself. It was very strong, very pungent, dissipated suddenly and unnaturally. The main one is about the crucifix. This has not worked in most instances in my experience. There's a couple where it's worked, but it's rare. It worked here, big style. But now, unfortunately, you can't see the edge of the paper. So somebody watching that who wasn't here will say, oh, somebody's pulling the paper. All we can say is you can't see whether someone is or not. As far as we know, it wasn't a human being. The paper curls up, the paper moves at the front as well. It's very strange how it happens. All I can say is make up your own mind. I believe something unusual happened there. Well, I've known Yvette a little while now, seen her both professionally working and also in her own space, in her home, etc., etc. And her reaction yesterday doesn't gel with her character or personality as I perceive it.
Directly before Yvette started to experience this, I felt as if I was getting that energy coming towards me, and what I did in just a reactionary way said, no, you know, I don't wish, and suddenly it jolted over, and poor Evie got the brunt of it.
I am convinced, personally, that what happened to her is not explainable by tiredness, expectancy of fear, all the things that we get in other places. I'm not saying what the cause was. Something happened to her, and I can't really explain what it was, knowing what I know about her.
I wanted to leave Derby Jail as quickly as possible. It was a strange place with an oppressive atmosphere. Everyone had been affected in some way or another, and no one was keen to go back.
This cardboard box, which obviously can catch fire very easily, was on top of these rings. It was directly there. It's several of them, so it's not just one knob. Feel them. They're on.
Oh, fantastic, isn't it?
Look at that!
No, that can't be right, that.
Oh.